Hello. All right, it says I'm live. Give me 1 second because I want to make sure I'm live on Instagram. Create live video. I don't think it's gonna work. So let's talk about audience public next. Go live. Stream. All right. Hello, beautiful people. If anybody is watching this on the replay, thank you for watching me. I appreciate you. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from Boston. And I was trying to go live on Instagram Live. I don't think it worked. I'll have to try it again next time. I know there's a way. I just haven't figured it out. But anyways, Happy New Year. This is my first live relationship podcast of the year. And so if you're new to me, what I do is I talk to people that are empowering people by sharing their story. And then once a month, Jeff Rogers and I, we go live to talk about relationships. I'm going to add him to the stream and have him introduce himself to you all. Where are you? Well, you got bootleg internet?
Is my internet bad? Uh-oh.
Oh, wait.
Can you?
Yeah, you're a little shaky. I can hear you, yeah.
I'm going to hope. What's up, y'all? I'm Jeff Rogers. I'm an executive coach, trainer, facilitator, all those things. And what I do is I help people work through their relationship issues. Oftentimes it's at work, but really life is all full of relationships. And that's basically what I do with my supervisor, Celeste.
Yeah, there's a delay, I can tell. But I'm gonna pay attention. You're talking faster than the words are coming out. But I'll pay attention to it.
1, 2. Mic check. 1, 2. Unique New York. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. She sells seashells by the seashore. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, how many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick?
Is that going to change the internet process?
Was that whole thing delayed?
Yeah, it was.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I really don't know what to do about that.
No, we can't do anything. We're live. I mean, we told the people we're going live, so we're live. So we answer your questions about relationships. So people write in and ask questions. I just want to make sure I got all the questions. I do want to start. Sorry, before I start, Jeff, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm pretty good.
Okay.
I just changed settings. Did that fix anything? Mic check. Fix or no?
No.
All right, then I guess that didn't do nothing.
It's okay. All right. I've been podcasting since 2018. I know how to roll with the punches, thank goodness.
Let's do it.
All right. So Jeff and I had a great live podcast in September, right? There's a question. It was pretty long. I'm going to sum it up. I'm going to put it on the screen, but I'm going to sum it up. I feel bad because I did not get to it. And I don't want people to be deterred from writing in. Like, Celeste ain't going to answer my question. So I'm not going to read it all, but I will sum it up. And if people want to read it, they can read it. This is a sum up of the sum up. I'm just going to start here. So it says, basically this person has been in a violent relationship with their partner. This person is the person that is being violent to their partner. And they were having a hard time in the relationship. So they talked to a friend who they broke up. This person, they broke up. The friend helped her find other partners to be with, and then eventually her friend ended up being with the partner. Eventually, what happened was she was spiteful. Even though they were broken up, she was upset that the friend went with her ex and got back with the ex out of spite. Currently with the ex, and she's currently with the ex and is not in love, doesn't like this person. And their question is, this is the person's question at the end of all of this. Am I the problem? They don't want to be with this person, but this person is taking care of them financially. She says, I told him we need to go to therapy before. He told her we need to go to therapy before we move on. Now I'm really in a no give a shit zone, and even planning to be out and about without him knowing. I feel bad. He provides for me. I don't have a job. He takes care of me financially. And then she says, am I the problem, and what should I do? Do I owe him loyalty, or can I be selfish and do what I want? Yeah.
Is this all? It was showing. Is this all one question? The
It is one question, but because it's so long, I'm realizing the whole thing didn't show up.
so let me see if I got this.
Mhm.
I don't know. The letter writer is violent with their partner. They hit their partner. Their partner does not hit them.
Never.
But their partner does cheat on them.
The partner has cheated on them.
Has cheated on them.
Past.
The letter writer has also cheated on the partner.
Correct.
And we're adding to that the letter writer is fully financially reliant on the partner.
Correct.
And the letter writer and the partner messed with the letter writer's friend.
Correct.
And then the letter writer stole the partner back, not out of love, but like, I'll teach you a lesson.
Correct.
Am I missing anything?
Nope. Everything's correct.
And so the question is, am I the problem?
Yeah, correct.
Well, first of all, the good news, you can't be the problem, because there's so many problems that it's problem plural. So no one is the problem, because there's 10,000 problems here.
Yeah.
Some problems you can't put in order, but Celeste, I'm going to say that one of these problems is more serious than all the others, as serious as they all are.
The violence.
The violence, right?
Yeah.
With partner violence is more serious even than cheating, even than low self-esteem or anything like that. There's not of all the things that's listed, this is the thing that's so serious that it's like different than cheating. It's different than we argue, which those things are tough. Celeste, you were summing it up, but the way you put it, you said we need to go to therapy before we move on.
That's what the partner said to the letter writer.
Right. I would go a step further and say, if there's a pattern of physical abuse, that you basically need to separate, and then therapy is the only way you could potentially get back together. That's the way that I look at it. What do you think?
No, I agree. And, with this being a female hitting on the male, unfortunately, that happens a lot. And men are, a lot of domestic violence happen the other way around, and men struggle with talking about it because there's a lot of shame behind it. And I think sometimes, when we have been in a situation for a long time, it's hard to get out. I feel bad for the partner who is putting up with this, right? And there may be guilt on their end for sleeping with their friend. And this person is trying to put their heels in the ground and prove a point that I got this person, but you're not happy. The letter writer said when she thinks about being with this person long term, she gets sick. She just this isn't who she wants to be with. And so, I think the question of, am I the problem? I think that you are one of the common denominators, and really thinking about your happiness. And it doesn't sound like it's going to change anytime soon. if you kind of stick in this relationship. Jeff, I think you are frozen. You
I,
are.
I can see you and hear you.
Okay, that's fine. As long as you can see me and hear me. But yeah, so I just think that when you ask, am I the problem? I really, for anybody that's in a relationship that may have a lot going on, um, and you find yourself not happy, just kind of look at your actions. I mean, great job taking accountability for your part in it, because this person sounds like they're taking full accountability, but just kind of, what do I do next? And I
Well,
think it's hard.
they surely, so depends on the way we look at accountability, right? So what they are surely doing is admitting that they take these actions, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
but the question is, what are you willing to do differently to basically interrupt the behavior that you're exhibiting? The
Yeah.
idea that, well, yes I hit him, and yes I know it's wrong, but I changed nothing. So, for example, it seems that alcohol is a factor. She said, when I drink, the emotions come out. Okay. So maybe have you said, well, I'm going to put a pause on all drinking, if that's
Yeah.
a trigger for hitting people.
Hmm.
Or you say, listen, I'm going to go and move back in with my mom, or whatever I'm going to do, because I'm not being safe. Because what happens if you drink and hit somebody? Oftentimes, intimate partner violence escalates.
Yep.
So next time, will it be a knife or a gun or a push down the stairs?
Yeah.
Or what if he defends himself physically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Hits you. Or what if the police get called and you go to jail and now you have felony? Or what if any number of things happen? It's really too serious to even, I don't want
Yeah.
to quite say waste time on the other stuff, but when I hear this, it's like, why even talk about can I be with them long term if you can't be safe today? You can't be safe with others, and you're putting yourself in a situation that only bad stuff happens. And Celeste, as you note, intimate partner violence, oftentimes what we used to call domestic violence, that people think of that as a shorthand for men hitting women, but that's
Oh,
actually not true. That's
yeah.
not true.
Mhm.
And women hit their mates at about the same rate as men hit their mates. Now, just to preface it, uh, that doesn't mean that all the true. It is true that men kill their partners more often.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
true. But in terms of hitting somebody who you're in a relationship with, that's unfortunately something that seems like many different types of people struggle with. But the most important thing is you got to interrupt that now, man. It's not like
Yeah.
we'll work through it. I used to do it a lot. Now I only do it a little. It's not one of those things. It's one of those things that you end now.
100%. Yeah. And, Jeff is right in regards to the facts of the correlate, the hitting piece being the same. Obviously, a lot men are a lot stronger, so the impact is different. A lot different physically when men do it. But I'll have people talking about, yeah, I know I wasn't supposed to, but I hit. And I have to be like, pause, like hitting is never okay. Just because a bruise wasn't left or they, walked out doesn't change the fact that putting your hands on someone else is just not okay. And if that's happening in your relationship, really kind of checking with your emotions, because like as Jeff said, that this stuff tends to escalate. And then it becomes normal. And then sometimes this person says that their partner doesn't hit them back, but eventually sometimes now we're back and forth, right? And that's just not a good space to be in.
So I would say all the other stuff, you don't even have to worry about it, because you should disconnect from this person right now. You say you see no future and you feel sick about them. So maybe you just disconnect. But
Yeah.
if you were to say, you know what, now with some space, I want to get back together, then what you would do is you would go to therapy and do all the work about this. It's not going to be very hard if you talk to a therapist or talk to a counselor and say, here's my problem. I had a mate and I used to get drunk and hit them all the time. They're not
Yeah.
going to be, they'll tell you what the problem is, meaning they're not going to say, well, sometimes they deserve it. Or, well,
Right.
alcohol does that. They're going to say, that's very serious and we need to try the following interventions.
Hmm. Thank you. All right. So next question. So I recently lost a friend to suicide. I'm struggling with understanding why. Can you speak on this topic and why does this happen?
Mm.
Um, so I'll start. Uh, you know, Suicide is something that I think people that's ever experienced depression sometimes can understand where people are. A lot of times, if people never really experience depression, they struggle with understanding. And it's hard because by the time people decide to do this, um, they have already made the decision. It's unfortunate. And for anybody that's listening that may be struggling with like suicidal thoughts, because I just want to preface because I worked in the ER and a lot of times therapists would send people to the emergency room if they were talking about like not wanting to be here. And I think when you're struggling, when you're thinking like, dang, it would be if I wasn't here, things would be so much easier. That's a common thing people say. It starts to get dangerous when you're planning it out, when you start to see how it can happen and those kind of things. And even if you're just having those thoughts, really trying to interrupt that cycle, and you can't do it alone. Like when you're struggling with these thoughts in isolation, energy is, your mind continues to look for reasons to keep that thought going, which is why when you're struggling with depression or not wanting to be here, really reaching out to somebody that's supportive, even if you don't have access to therapy, reaching out to a support system. There are plenty of free sites and free resources to tap into. And it can feel shameful, especially because a lot of times people that are struggling with suicide, um, it's something that you can't see, and so for them, it feels shameful to even talk about, especially depending on if you come from a religious background. Of the Black community, right? It's just talking about depression. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma, even though a lot of people are going through it. It just blows my mind the amount of stigma that takes place. So unfortunately, like it's one of those things that you'll never find out. And there's an emotional roller coaster that goes on, and unfortunately, like I've met people on both sides of attempt and the people that deals with the aftermath, and beating yourself up for not seeing it, it's not going to help you. I think that's one of the main things. People who have people in their lives that they lost that way, they will beat themselves up and think like, oh, well, if I did this or if I did that, and just understand that when people make a decision, unfortunately, they're not going to show you. Actually, in fact, they tend to like seem a bit happier at times towards the end because they've made that decision, which a lot of
Right.
people don't understand. What are your thoughts about this question?
Right. Well, the so it can be a little counterintuitive for somebody who many people. So everyone has been sad in their life, right? And oftentimes
Mhm.
people use depression as a synonym for sadness, but it's not a synonym for sadness, right? You're not depressed, for example. Although we might say it if your cat dies, people might say I'm depressed because my cat died, but really
Right.
that actually it doesn't count as depression if your cat died, because that's like basically a good, you would expect a normal person to be sad under those circumstances, right? Your
Mhm.
cat died last week, so you wouldn't say, well, I'm depressed because my cat died. You might say that, but clinically that's not really what that means.
Right.
Depression is kind of a persistent feeling of malaise, of hopelessness. That's a little different. And then oftentimes what they find with people who are suicidal is that when they ask them, why do they want to end their lives, they say something to the effect of, not that like I want to be happy or something like that. They say, I want the pain to end.
Yep.
You can almost think of being suicidal as chronic pain of the soul, in the same way that some people, it's not that any one thing happened, their back just
Right.
aches all the time. It just aches to where they
Right.
just say, I can't, it hurts when I stand, it hurts when I lay down. People who are suicidal, that's basically how they're describing how they feel on like a soul level.
Yeah.
And so they say, I just want it to end. And so when, and that's why when we talk about people that are planning, when they start the planning stage of I'm going to do this way or that way, they feel they can. This is counterintuitive, but they can feel some relief because they go, okay, at least it'll be over soon.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, that's exactly, someone just put, when the person's happier at the end, it's because they're at peace because they know they'll no longer be here. That's exactly right, because it's as if it was a chronic physical pain, it's like as if they knew I'm getting surgery in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Yep.
though it hurts, thank God, countdown to surgery. This is that same thing. There's a phrase I like, which is that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are so many people who commit suicide, right? Who are in that way, and but there are so many other people who say they make an attempt that's unsuccessful. You know, we're glad that it's unsuccessful, and they
Yeah.
talk about how, as they laid there, right? They thought, oh, you know what? I do want to live, or you know what? I wish I had another chance. People who, this sounds interesting, but people who have jumped,
Yep.
so they jump off something high. They talk about, on the way down, I wanted to live.
Yep.
And so we actually know that oftentimes people feel as though there's no hope and I just want relief and I want it to end. But we know, we actually have enough data to know that if someone is suicidal, oftentimes they regret it.
Yep.
And so I think an important thing to do if you're having these feelings is to seek help, talk to somebody about it, right? There's no, the truth is you have all the power,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so there's no harm. Exhaust your options. Talk to people. Don't hold it all in. You talk to somebody that doesn't do nothing. Talk to somebody else. The truth is, this is a weird way to look at it, but you always have that option, right? But you don't always have the option to live.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing to think about. And then lastly, if you're somebody that's dealing, like in this case, the letter writer, they lost a friend to suicide. I think an important thing to keep in mind is that it's not your fault. And this stuff is, it's heavy, but it's not something that you would think that it would be obvious what they were thinking or what was going to happen, but it's not. That's not true. And oftentimes people do. Rich people, successful people, famous people, people who have achieved their dreams still fall victim to suicide. So it's not as though you can just tell, well, I should have known because their life is going this way, or they said this or said that. It's not true. It's just like chronic physical pain. It's like a chronic pain of the heart, and it's not so.
Yeah, you're right. Jeff described it really great, that pain that people experience that's really so it's so deep that is people can't really explain it, and you can't tell, you just can't tell. And like Black Girls Getting Their Shifts Together said, it's kind of like they feel like they found the remedy to the problem, which is where the happier peace comes from. So and this is why I do, there are times I hate social media. I just hate having to like be on the spotlight. I just want to like give out information and cook my food and be behind the scenes. But this stuff that happens, like, people with the suicidal ideation and all this stuff, like my hate for my love for people and wanting to see them do well is stronger than my hate for social media and all the stuff that goes into the things that I do, because I realize that people don't recognize there's another way, because we're not taught, especially here in America. We got so much propaganda, we got so much content that's being pushed, and we are bombarded, and we don't understand how to separate ourselves from that. A lot of times we have what we need, but the way the agenda is here, I think sometimes we don't look at what we have. We just look at what we don't have. And we create our own, like, there's some pain, there's things that's happened, but we continue to allow it to ruminate and circulate by the way that we're framing it. And if you're not intentional about the way you're doing life, especially if you live in America, you're always going to feel like you're behind. You're always going to feel like nothing's going right. because that narrative is not pushed about being present, being in the moment, using what you have. That narrative isn't brought out. So it's hard to just unintentionally like think that way and have these kind of thoughts unless you are intentional about it, and that shouldn't be the case, but unfortunately it is. So okay.
Very good. So let's get some heavy questions, man. These are some heavy. This is
I know.
heavy.
I was like,
We can afford these long breaks because the heavy questions are piling up.
I mean, it is, winter, unfortunately. A lot of suicides happen after the holidays, unfortunately. But it's winter and it's cold and people aren't moving their bodies, and it's harder in the wintertime for people.
Right. The one thing, it's not perfect, but the one thing I'll note, a known um, something that's counteractive to suicide and feelings of suicide is the feeling of human connection. And by
Mm-hmm.
that, I mean people that are getting, instead of receding, they're being social, they're engaging with other folks, right? It's a chicken
Yeah.
soup for the soul. I'm talking about the soul a lot today, even though I'm a materialist by nature. But it's that kind of thing. So the one thing I will say, being the best friend you can, reaching out to people. You know what people say, like, the phone works two ways. It does. And so, feel free to reach out to people sometimes, instead of getting these little things. Well, I called them last, they didn't call me back. Maybe, but maybe just hit them up and say, hey, just making sure you're good, friend.
Yo,
Because
Jeff, I hear that all the time.
right, people say it all. They say, look, if they can't, don't forget who didn't check on you and you didn't do all these little things. That's not the way to look at life. That's not the way.
No, please don't.
Just be generous.
Yeah.
You don't have to give away everything, but you can afford to call somebody. You call them on Monday and then you call them on Thursday. That's not sweating them. Sometimes you're just saying, hey,
No.
I just haven't heard from you, Celeste.
Yeah. And I want to say, because I hear this all the time, and then it's like, oh, I call, or the phone works twice. When was the last time you called them? And sometimes people can't remember. We internalize everything. Human connection is so important and powerful. I think they said there's a loneliness epidemic, if I'm not mistaken. And I knew that was going to happen with the pandemic, right? Like this isolation, it started the process. So you're finding, and that's why when I started off talking about this question, I said, when you're having these thoughts, do not do this alone, because it's impossible to get out of that cycle by yourself. And when you have people in your life, be intentional about making connections, even if you don't feel like it, because you don't feel like it because of how you feel. But then I promise you, when you do the thing that people are like, oh, I wasn't gonna go, but then I forced myself to go, and I'm so glad I went. And I'm like, good. When you force yourself, that's the medicine. You talk about medicine, we need that human connection medicine, man.
There's somebody in your Texas right now. Look through your Texas to the kind of old ones, and just think one person. Just send them the text. Hey, I'm just checking in on my friend.
Yeah.
Just send that and see what happens.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Not to me, though, but okay, yeah.
I know. Now I'm gonna be annoying. Now I'm gonna do it. Now I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be annoying. Let me check on my boy Jeff. All right, another tough one. But this is what we're here for, right? Everything can't be all like rosy and stuff. So this is life, right? So it says, my teenage son has behavior issues and struggles with mood and depression. He is disrespectful to his mom. He has been this way, but recently lost his father. Can you help me help him? Want to start?
So this sounds like a step parent, right? Is it a third caregiver, because he's disrespectful to his mom, but also
I never read it. I didn't read it like that. You're right. I was confused that he is disrespectful to his mom, but this sounds like a step parent. Yes.
let's assume it's a step parent, a step caregiver.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, you know what a big challenge of this is? A big challenge is that people often seek to address this in the moment, but in the moment is not the best time to address this.
Yeah.
So in other words, the kid comes in and mom says, Junior, did you do your homework? And he goes, shut up, mom. And then at that moment, you go, what's the matter with you? Show more respect. You seem moody and depressed lately.
Yeah.
But that ain't the time.
It's
You
not.
agree with that, Celeste?
A
That's a hard.
100%. I practice that at home with my teenage. She's not even a teenager, but my pre-teenage daughter.
Right. So another time, everything's going okay. You go in the room. You say, hey, you knock on the door. You walk in. You go, hey, there's a lot of ways you could do it. You could say, I'm thinking about going out for ice cream. You want to go? Or you walk in the room and you just say, hey, I had a question I wanted to ask you. And say, what? He said, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it said that sometimes teens, that adults forget that teens, they got a lot of anger that adults don't really like notice or pay enough attention to. What do you think about that? Right? Instead of saying, I notice your behavior stinks, you kind of just leaving the door open to talk. Like, I know, teens, I saw this thing, and it said that sometimes teens, like, they got a lot of emotions because their life's complicated, and that adults don't always recognize that. Is that the way you feel? And then C, if the kid, is this frozen?
No, we see you.
Okay.
We hear you.
It was then you see if the kid will talk to you a little bit. The goal of this conversation, this is very important. The goal of this conversation is not to cure the kid of mood and depression. Celeste, can you cure a kid of moodiness and depression in one
No,
conversation? No, you
no,
cannot.
not a teenager, especially.
The goal of this conversation is just to have one open, honest, positive interaction. Just one. And then from there, as you talk to this, I know this is the kind of thing me and Celeste do, so maybe the words come a little easier. But the real goal is not to correct them. You can't turn it into a lecture. You know when you talk to your parents and you talk to them about something silly, and then they turn it into a goddamn lecture? Don't do that. Don't do it. Your goal is to listen. Ideally, the kid will do 80% of the talking, and you'll do 20%. And you just so they say, yeah, I'd be mad all the time because adults, y'all just don't, y'all act crazy and y'all don't listen and y'all force it and y'all are mid. Y'all, all adults are mid, and then you just listen. You go, oh, that's okay. You say, oh, so what would, and then you just say, well, what are some things? What would you do? Do you want? Would you talk to an adult about? Would you like talk about this? And maybe they're willing to go see the therapist or the school therapist, or what you're trying to do is open the lines of communication. This is the exact opposite of, they go hide in their room, you hear their music blasting, whatever it is, that they're playing the video game, arguing with people on the headset, and then you only interact with them when you want them to clean up or do something, and then they go, this is quite the opposite.
Right.
You're basically walking up to them, handing them a microphone. What do you think, Celeste?
Yeah, I'm laughing. I recently learned about mid. My kids clown me all the time because I don't know a lot of stuff. They say I'm glazing sometimes, which is like sweating them. Um, so first, parent, I want to say kudos to you for writing in, right? I know that if growing up, the idea that kids has feelings sounded like a foreign like concept, right? Because if you have food on your table, clothes on your back, a roof over your head, what are you upset about? And that was kind of the narrative that was played out in a lot of our homes. And for me to parent the way I parent, took a lot of intention. It still does. And like Jeff did say, I do want to point out, obviously, we do this work, so it's easier for us to think this way and dialogue in this way with our kids, because it's just the way that we kind of operate already. I love Jeff's approach, and it's an important approach to have, because in the middle of like when things are heated, right, when they're in this space, like getting clarity from them is not going to work. Even if you're in a relationship and you guys are both like in this heated space, I say, like, take a break, don't keep going. But for a parent, especially a Black parent, to be like, you want me to just let them be, like, it feels kind of disrespectful. It feels kind of, and I get it, right? But also, it's important to build a relationship with them, right? This person's a teenager, they just lost their dad, and they're a teenager, right? I think about the teenagers during COVID, they were probably what, in middle school, elementary. There's a lot that was missed out on with the kids, you know. And I know with parents, we're dealing with financial things, we're dealing with all these things. So, especially if we're providing for our kids, sometimes it's kind of like, what are you upset about, right? They have kiddish, they have stuff that they go through that may not appear to be as complicated as our lives, but the feeling that we feel with the complications, they're feeling that same intensity, right? And they're human. And we want to teach them how to deal with their emotions in real time, especially while they're under our roof, and giving them the tools that they need to deal with life, right? Because his mom is there. He's being disrespectful to his mom. That's not how life works. You can't be out in the community being disrespectful and expecting to still be provided for. And so Jeff's approach is great in trying to create some kind of cadence around conversation, not just when things are going wrong, but when they're going well. For parents that are listening that may have similar struggles too and want to work on connecting, having some kind of like nighttime routine. In the morning is kind of tough, but a nighttime routine where you're checking in, how was your day? What, like, these are literally things that I do with my kids. How was your day? What are you grateful for? How are you feeling? What went well? How are you going to prepare for tomorrow? They're so used to it, but at the beginning they was like, do we have to blah, blah, blah. But it's been going on for so long that it's pretty normal. And even when they still may not really want to do it, I say, like, I'm okay with you feeling this way, but know that I'm giving you the tools you need to deal with life, because I don't care how smart you are, how much money you have. When life starts lifing, if you don't have those tools to deal with what you're feeling, and then you're going to project it out, or you're going to not do the things you want to do. Like, so many things hinder us, not because it's outside of us, but it's literally inside of us. So, I think that you're amazing for even like writing in to try to get support. And that's a huge start. And even if you talk to someone too to help you with your patience and your mindset around dealing. I have parents I work with. I don't work with them as a family unit or with them and their child, but we talk about these things and I help them process and help them think about how to do this. And so that's something that you can do as well. Like, go to therapy, and even if you feel like you're fine, you can say, like, I want help with navigating this process with my son or whoever this person is in your life. And even his mom too, bringing the mom in on it as well. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And there's something I want to be explicit about, because this is a little bit of a mindset change.
Yeah.
Which is, right. Black the shift together says, I grew up like that. Kids have no emotions. This basic idea. Here's the real truth. Kids have emotions that are as big as adult emotions, right? You could get just as mad at 8 as you can get at 38.
Yep.
But they only have the kids' tools to deal with them, right? So you can be just as sad or just as mad or just as happy. I think I remember my emotions pretty much being stronger as a kid, right? That's how I remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not true that kids don't have emotions or should behave like they don't. No, I'm going to say some people might think of this as like airing dirty laundry, but I've been Black a long time now. And there's words that we use, and it affects the way we look at parenting. So oftentimes when we as Black parents talk about respect, oftentimes what we really mean is obedience, right? Obedience.
Yeah.
Right? Do exactly what I say. If you're a really good parent, you would tell the kids, stand up, and they go, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And they would just stand up like they're in the army. And if they don't do that, you're a bad parent. And when you see kids laid out crying in the grocery store, you go, it wouldn't be me, because my kids know, and I'll get the belt, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And, we act exactly like what we don't like out of the police, right? People that just wield their authority and don't listen. I'm not saying every Black parent does it. I'm not saying everyone does it to the same degree, but I'm talking about a culture.
It's culture, yeah.
A culture that associates discipline with shutting up and just following directions.
Yeah.
And so that's not exactly the same thing. And you can talk to your kids and they can talk to you, and it's not always talking back. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying hand your kids the authority. They're in charge of you now. They decide that you're having pizza instead of meatloaf or whatever. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
saying that there's a way to speak to your children where it doesn't have to be about intimidation. It doesn't have to trigger constant power struggles. That's where you're going to prove to them, I'll show you who's in charge. They
Right.
know who's in charge. They know you're the one with the money and the driver's license and the lease, right? And so if you get away from those power struggles and get towards, and I'm not saying the letter writer did this, I'm more talking about the general way
Right.
that you and I both are familiar with, right? I'm talking about from my upbringing. I'm
Yeah.
not talking
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. For sure.
about my upbringing. The
Yeah.
basic idea where if I said, I had a tough day, they go, you had a tough day. You don't know nothing. I gave you everything. You're so
Right.
lucky to have this. You're ungrateful. If you don't listen, I'll give you something to cry about.
Right. Right.
It don't right. Some old school parents treat their kids like property. The expectation that the best parenting, right, is where you tell your kids jump and they say how high. It's not realistic. And I'm not just saying that it's mean. I'm saying it's less effective because put it this way, I know many, this is real talk. I know many, like this is, I would say, a big part of the default Black parenting culture. Are we famous for our perfectly behaved children? It doesn't work.
We're not famous for them, but we tend to, kind of think of when we see kids acting a certain way, we be like, it couldn't be us.
Wouldn't be us. But at the same time, is it working? Do you get what I'm saying?
It's not
Is
working.
it working? It doesn't work. That's why it doesn't work. What
No.
ends up happening is once you are not bigger than your kid, or once they're big enough to go out on their own or whatever it is, at that point, if you teach them might makes right, then you know what, they'll go out and they'll think might makes right.
Yeah.
But if you teach them how to negotiate challenges, interpersonal challenges, then they'll bring that out into the world.
Yeah, that part. And I just want to add, right, for parents that, are listening to this and maybe be enlightened or like, I don't know about all that. I want you to understand, because I only deal with adults and I don't work with kids. But when I talk to my adults who are struggling with understanding what's happening, their emotions and all this stuff, the reason why they're struggling is because their emotional needs weren't met. They were taught to behave and do things a certain way. And so when they did have these emotions, they were ignored. People don't realize that your body gives you signs you're not okay. The emotions happen for a reason. It's supposed to give us signs, right? And if we're growing up in these households, unfortunately, and it's not about fault, because unfortunately, a lot of the culture that Black people experience in their families come from white supremacy and slavery and the obedience piece of it, right? And so, that was put in place for a reason. We needed that during the 70s. Like, we had to make sure our kids were a certain way so they didn't get killed, right? So a lot of the habits and the ways that were in place were there for a reason. And so I get that. So this is not about fault, because some people might say, well, I was this and I'm fine. And, but the emotional piece, I know for a fact, is what's been missing from so many people who don't understand, who are dealing with medical issues because they've just let things pile up. So, really think about, the death stare, right? Really think about what you are doing with your children. And just because it worked for you or you feel like it's fine, pay attention, because every kid's different and their needs are different. I have 12, my two youngest are two different, a boy and a girl, but they have two different personalities, and the way that we treat them when, is completely different. And so pay attention to how your kid is responding to these things and what their needs are. Glennis says adultism is real. Children feel and hurt too. Parents must model the behavior we expect. Absolutely.
Exactly.
LaRon says we are raising kids in a different era from how we were raised. Yeah, that point too, right? We're raising, it's a different era. And the things that they're exposed to, I can't go down a freaking rabbit hole about that. I used to think humping was sex and I was going to get pregnant.
Oh, I was like, oh yeah, well, okay.
I didn't have Google. So somebody probably said it and I ran with it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get pregnant. So
let's
now
just low-key admitted to dry humping. All right, sorry, go ahead.
So now these kids have access to everything, right? So you really want them to be able to have a safe space in the home because um because because by the time
LaRon says, for the record, I still hump. LaRon, you're gonna get someone pregnant through them jeans. So you better, Celeste, you got to put on a condom before you dry hump. That's what Celeste says. That's Celeste's advice.
and so they think they're smarter than us because when I was probably like 12 and 13, they know way more than I did at 12 and 13. But like, what are they doing with this information? So yeah, letter writer, dope that you wrote in, dope that you're trying. Like, kudos to you. It's really hard to kind of like switch up what you've known your entire life or what you thought was going to be true when it comes to parenting, which is hard.
Right. The goal is just to open a line for the letter writer to open the line of communication and resist the urge to lecture. You got to resist the urge to lecture.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what they say at this, because you can't say, open up and tell me. And then they tell you something. You go, what? You disrespectful. You open it and say, hey, I heard, I was just listening to something and it talked about how kids, they got a lot of emotions inside and their family don't listen to them. So I wanted to, is that how you feel? Is you got a lot of emotions inside? And then
Yeah,
if they say it, if they tell you anything at all, you just go, you know what? I'm going to think about that. Is it okay if we talk again or we
I
can never
love
talk?
that.
That's all. If you can get that going, then that would be a lot because
That's
half,
dope.
by the way, in my work, because I started my work working with kids. And first, let me say that I worked with all the toughest kids, the kids that were, some of them were taken away from their families, right? Some of them
Mm,
had to be, the family said, listen, please take my son. He won't listen. But remember, I'm not allowed to beat them,
right.
right? When I work with the kids, I could never spank them or beat them. I couldn't threaten them with a beating, nothing like that. And yet I got better results generally than their families were getting. So
Yeah.
I know that you don't have to hit kids. I know I wasn't allowed to scream at them, and I still got better results. So that's one thing. But the other thing to keep in mind is a phrase I like. You're not raising children. You have children. You're raising an adult.
Yeah.
So every interaction is an opportunity for you to nurture the things in them you want to see.
Yeah.
Because the person who said that the first letter writer talked about today that when they drink, they hit their partner. And we said, oh, that's very serious. Right? But where do you think that comes from? We
Yeah.
don't know. The letter writer doesn't know. But where might they have learned that when you're upset with somebody, hitting them corrects their behavior? Where
Yeah.
could they have learned that? I'm not saying it's a fact, but I
Right.
wonder where you'd learn that hitting somebody you love makes them obey.
Hmm.
Something.
Yeah. And I'll say what Jeff said. Like, I love. Sorry, this is the last. I got one more question, but I love what you're helping parents like talk to the kids, even if they don't understand. I mean, my husband has a cheat code because his wife is a therapist, but man, sometimes his face, I'd be like, bro, fix your face, because he's, you know, some of his stuff. He'd be like, he rolls his eyes, and I'd be like. But
Right.
I get it, right? And I'm clear. Me and Jeff do this work for a living, so obviously it's a little different. So I want to name that out loud because we're talking about this stuff. But I also want to say, when you're not in this world, it's challenging to fix your face and to not be like, what? Like, because you want to make sure that it's a non-judgmental zone, right? That's important.
It's right. Just listen, the power is being heard. This is not the same as
Yes.
whatever the kid says, you go, that's true. The kid goes, the kid will probably say, I do all the cleaning in this house. Y'all don't clean nothing.
What
Kids
makes
kids
you
be
feel
thinking
that
that
way?
because they took out the trash once in a month.
One time.
They think they're doing it. You do nothing here. But the goal is you just be like, oh, I didn't know you felt that way. You can
Yes.
say that because you didn't know. The fact that it's on its face outrageous, you leave that for another day because you want the kid to be able to talk. Maybe if they talk before things pile up, then
Yes.
maybe you'll be able to head things off. And of course, this is all in concert with. Of course, you could seek therapy for the kid or family therapy, all these things. But
Yes.
we could say that for every question,
Right.
right?
Right.
Go to therapy. But what we're trying to do is give you tools that you could like start today or start the first day when the kid's in the green. Don't
Yes.
talk to them when they're in the red. Talk to them when they're in the green. You can't work on the engine while it's overheating. It has to cool off. Then you can work on it, right?
Oh, yes. I like that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna quote you though. Don't worry. I'm gonna quote you. All right. This is our last question. So it says, I'm having a hard time regulating my emotions. Everything upsets me. I feel stupid for feeling this way because I cannot pinpoint why I feel this way. I just want to feel happy. I have no idea where to start.
Celeste, what do you think about this?
Uh, we're back to emotions. I think we've been talking about emotions all day. You know, if it, when we don't have the tools to deal with our emotions, it feels like everything upsets us. I remember I spoke to this lady. We talked about energy and how it transfers, and how the things that we're thinking about, we start to see it that way, right? And if you don't interrupt that cycle, right, because the mind goes where we tell it to go, whether explicit, like literally, intentionally, or just by us just um moving the way we're moving in life, it only sees the things that are in our thoughts. And so if you're having a hard time regulating your emotions, I tell people to pay attention to their body and how their body feels, because we can get an emotion chart and try to look at, what are we feeling, but sometimes we don't have words, and that's okay, right? I want people to be able to start where they are. I love what you said, the last part of the question, where you said, yeah, we can say go to therapy, right? Obviously, I believe in therapy. I'm a therapist, but I also recognize the limitations that are in the mental health system in 2024. And so my goal is to help people with practical tools. And a big thing that I help people do is just kind of pay attention to what's happening in their body in those moments, and kind of start there, and bringing joy into your life by doing something that you like intentionally, even if you haven't done anything in a while, even if it was something from your childhood, like going back to being able to play, be in nature, like just doing something. And even if it doesn't feel good, go back to it the next day or the next week. It may take time, but don't give up on trying. And I think that's what's missing in our life, is doing things that bring us joy, because we're so into surviving. We're just been surviving, and we don't really think about that deeply. What are your
Mm.
thoughts?
I think that all makes sense. And in terms of when you say you don't know why you're feeling that way, and you don't know, you say everything upset you, but of course it's not literally everything. So one thing you could do, you could have a app on your phone, like a note taking app, right? And every time you feel that rush of emotion that you feel like you can't explain, this is just a list of basically what made me cry,
Mhm.
right? And once that list gets 5, 6, 7 instances deep, some trends might appear, right? There's certain things, for example, that I find very touching, right? I'll give you two quick stories. There's a story where a little boy, and this may or may not be even true, but this is like a classic kind of internet story, where a little boy finds out that he needs to donate. His sister needs a blood transfusion, so he's going to donate blood to her. And so, she's asleep, she's sedated, and then they sedate the little boy to donate the blood. When he wakes up, he's surprised. He goes, Did I not donate the blood? What happened?" The little boy thought that he was donating his life, that she was going to give her his blood,
Oh,
and therefore he wouldn't live anymore. So this little boy pleasantly thought he was going to his grave to save his sister. I
oh
find that
my,
story.
yeah.
There's another story about during the Irish, what we call the Irish potato famine, where the Irish people were being starved off the land in Ireland, and that's why a lot of them came to the United States. That happened around the same time as the Native Indigenous people of America suffered the Trail of Tears, where they were driven from their land and into, like corralled into smaller and smaller land, like reservations, the Trail of Tears. But the natives found out about the potato famine, and what they did was they took up a collection during this time. They took up a collection and donated, what was probably the equivalent of $2,000 or something like that, some kind of meager amount, right, to Ireland. But now there's a statue in Ireland of the tribe that did it, American indigenous people, that says, like, the people of Ireland will never forget what those brave indigenous people did that day. And that story, I'm welling up a little bit now telling that story. I think it's so powerful.
Mhm.
You know what those stories have in common? They're both people who had almost nothing, but still were moved to to make a sacrifice. They
Uh,
didn't. They didn't say, "Well, I'm worse off than you. I'll be worse off than you at the end of this." They just had pure empathy. And so it turns out that like an emotional trigger for Jeff is that kind of pure empathy. And it took me a long time to realize that that's the kind of story that touches this cynical old bastard deep inside. So you make a list of the things that touch you,
yeah.
right? That touch you, and maybe when you get down to 2, 3, 4, 5 instances, it'll become clear what it is that's nagging at you. Maybe realize, oh my gosh, those things make me upset because that's the same thing that happened to me when I was a teenager, or that's
Yeah.
what my ex-husband did to me, or I've been feeling that way ever since my mom passed.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
really not over everything, and it's not over nothing. It's over
Yeah.
something. And life
Mhm.
is just about understanding yourself.
It it is, and it's so interesting because I'll hear people's story, and then we'll be dealing with something in present, and I'll say, "Oh, that reminds me of blah blah blah," what you said, and they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought about that." Right. And so, the practice that I say I do with my kids about what went well, what didn't go well, where they're checking in, that's something, I took my kids are surprised that people don't know about how to do that because I've never had that. But because they've been doing it this way for so long, it's like they normalize it where they're talking about their emotions. And so like you can do that as well, where the thing that Jeff says, even if you're like, when am I going to have time, or before you go to bed, make it part of your routine. It's easier to create a habit when you're doing it with something you're already doing. The shower meditation for me is pretty simple because it's something I do regularly. So I'm always like checking in, like, oh, how did the day go? What went well? Like, I literally will do that all the time, because I recognize I need to be processing stuff out, because if I don't, then my head's going to be filled with all these thoughts. I'm going to have trouble sleeping, right? There's so many ways that we're affected, which is, I'm having a hard time regulating my emotion. Everything upsets you. Does everything upset you? And I do want to point out this part. I feel stupid for feeling this way. Understanding yourself without judgment is an important factor to this process. Because if you weren't taught about emotions, I wasn't taught about emotions, and I did used to feel bad for feeling bad. So I understand where the statement's coming from. But I do want you to remind, like, when you find yourself saying that, remind yourself, like, nope, Celeste, it's okay. You don't have to feel bad. You didn't know. Like, you don't know what's going on. You're human. You're trying to figure it out, because that part's going to stop you from the process when you're walking around with a bully in your head talking about what's wrong with you. You feel dumb. You're so dumb because of this. Or some people may have like literally things together, like their bills may be paid, they have a roof and over their head, like the things that we talked about earlier, how we grew up having, and we're upset with ourselves because we're feeling this way and we don't understand why. Sometimes it doesn't have to be nothing happening in front of you. It could be things that you've never dealt with. So really thinking about, how do I give myself grace during this process, because it's an important factor in the process.
All that makes sense. And the only thing I'm going to add is it was the Choctaw people that donated to Ireland. The Choctaw people. And there's a monument to the Choctaw people in Ireland because of what they did.
That's dope. You always have all this knowledge. Like, you're just so smart.
That's what I
Um,
can do at a dunk.
I mean, that's why I have you here. Before we go, I want you to kind of wrap it up and give me a summary. And as you're thinking about the summary, um, I just want to let people know about this. Jeff is like in all these pictures, so I'm assuming this is your thing.
This,
Tell us about Hella Black Trivia, because you did something last month. I was out of town.
oh, sure.
And
Uh,
I'm in town for this February 6th. Yes. So me and my man, we're gonna try to take the trophy. No, but tell people about Hella Black Trivia, because I've gone to a lot of your stuff and it's pretty dope.
sure. So, Hello Black Trivia, as we sometimes call it, trivia with seasoning, right? It's trivia that I do in the community with with the African diaspora in mind. So it's open to everybody, and truly, I mean this. It's meant to be inclusive, so anyone could participate and have fun. But it's the kind of trivia. Usually, I say, like, it's not civil rights and slavery trivia, right? It's not trivia about Martin Luther King. It's the kind of trivia night that Martin Luther King would have loved to have gone to. So this February 6th, which is a Tuesday, we're doing Long Live Roxbury, which is it's in Boston, Roxbury, a brewery. Y'all can come out. This event is free. You can register right with that.
I'm definitely going. Free.
Right now that it's free.
Okay.
Now that it's free. But tickets. I released the tickets 2 days ago. They're almost all gone because the brewery
Let
does
me
not
go
have
online right now, real quick.
It's time to get them. But yeah, I'd love to see y'all out there. And this is the Jeff that's anti-therapeutic. Instead of doing therapy, I'm going to mock you for doing for your terrible lack of trivia knowledge.
He really will. As only way I participate is if my husband participates, because he's the man who has all the answers. This was awesome, Jeff. This was like, it feels like when I seen the questions, I was like, oh, this is so heavy, but this is what I do for a living,
We do.
Like wrap this up for us. What do you think some common themes? First, we had the person that was struggling with alcohol and hitting their partner, a parent who wants to help their teenage son regulate their emotions. We also had someone who wants to regulate their emotions, and I feel like I'm missing one.
Well, in all those cases you name, what people are struggling with is their emotions are causing them to act instead of informing their behavior. Their emotions are dominating them, right? That the young man, the teenager, the person who's hitting their partner, this woman who's not even sure why she's upset, but she feels overwhelmed by it, as if it was a random avalanche of emotion. And so a lot of it is what ties all those together is that we have an expectation that a big step would be understanding what's causing me to feel this way, and how can I act differently? How can I behave differently? You are not a slave to your emotions. I don't know how to feel differently all the time. You're going to feel how you feel, but you don't have to you don't have to react in that way. You don't have to. Right. And there's many people who, when they get angry, they think I ought to punch you in the face. And there's many other people who they get angry and they say I ought to punch you in the face, but they go, but I won't, because I have stuff to lose, because I'm not that kind of person, because I've decided not to do that anymore. And they can short circuit instead of simply saying, my rage is other people's problem. It's like, no, my rage is something that I can tame, if not eradicate. And so I think that's very important. When we talk about the young man, the young son, we're talking about arming him with that instead of just saying, I can get madder than you, and so I win right now. If he's not already killing his mother, he will be, though. And so we're trying to arm him with the kind of stuff that it doesn't matter who's bigger. He just doesn't hit people or scream at people or storm off because he's under control. Very, very useful skills to have in life. It's hard for me to imagine somebody who's very successful in all the domains of their life, but they're out of control and they just do whatever their emotions tell them to do.
That's good. Jeff Rogers, find you where? At rogersleads.com.
Yeah, if you look up rogersleads.com, you can email me, jeff@rogersleads.com. If you need me, I'm here. All right.
Oh my gosh, Jeff, sorry. I never said let people know what you do, because I usually start with that.
I said at the beginning. Don't worry about it. Yeah, but
oh, you did? Okay. All right, cool.
Executive coach.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. This was truly amazing, and we will see you next